Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Leslie Summerall with LesReflections. Each week I like to show you my project for the week in a video, and this week was this pretty end table with the white stencils, the new white knobs, and if you can see, the top has the stencils on top of a bleached look. I finished today, started and finished beginning to end, and I have never done that. So if you want to see how I got to this transformation from that, come on, I'll show you how I did it. So this piece was a piece that was given to me with several others, and is actually a very nice piece of furniture by Bassett. And I love it, except I just wanted it to be lighter. So I started by emptying the drawer and taking out the drawers and then removing the hardware. This top drawer didn't have all of the pieces to the hardware, and the bottom one did, so I went ahead and removed that. I won't be using these pieces of hardware for this piece, so I'm putting them in a small plastic bag to use later, and I labeled it with a Sharpie. And as always, I start my pieces by cleaning them thoroughly with a TSP based cleaner with my spray bottle, getting all of the surfaces clean to get rid of that grime and dust that may have collected while this was sitting in a garage for a while waiting for me to work on it. I am cleaning the top of this piece, even though I know I'm going to be sanding it, because I don't want to sand any grime into the surface. And as you can see, I'm really taking my time to get that cloth deep into the crevices so that I don't leave any dust at all in those corners, because if the dust is there, the paint will stick to the dust, not to the piece. Next, I'm rinsing it with clear water and a clean cloth. I have to make sure that I get all of that soap residue off, because it will not allow the paint to adhere. Now on to sanding the top. Each time I sand down to the bare wood, I use 4 levels of sandpaper grit. I start with a very coarse grit. Here I'm using a 50 to remove the varnish and the stain. And of course this is fast forward, so you know it took some time to get this finish off. It's a really nice piece, like I said initially, and the finish was well done. Even though it took some time, I kept on working with 50 grit sandpaper until all of this finish was gone, and then after that I started graduating up to finer grits up to a 220. My next step was to add some Dixie Belle mud wood filler to some tiny spots that were there that I wanted to smooth out before I put the paint on. There weren't very many because this was in a very good shape. After sanding that down, I cleaned off the dust again. Next, I used my Zibra brush, which is a really nice, small, angled brush that makes cutting into the edges so much easier. Here, I'm using it on my other little layers or edges, but I don't really have to. I enjoy using it, so I just kept on. But here you can see I'm using it to cut into that top edge where the sanded wood is. Then I switched to my medium oval by Dixie Belle to fill in the middle and the legs. As always, you'll want to make sure that you're really looking for any drips along the way as you're painting, because once they dry, it's harder to get rid of them. I use sandpaper and then I have to clean everything up again, and so it's just really a lot better to go ahead and make sure that you're not leaving drips as you go along. It's a lot easier now to paint since I've gotten my handy dandy stool that rolls around on the floor, so I can get to these spots a lot easier, but sometimes I feel like I really ought to just paint when I'm standing on my head. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who feels that way. Oh, and I bought this stool from Harbor Freight. It's just short enough and it has wheels that turn 360 degrees and a little tool tray underneath. Another really nice trick for painting furniture is having these roller caddies that serve as little tiny dollies. You can turn it around, and as long as you're pretty careful, they don't come off of the rollers. I bought mine from Amazon and they were really very affordable. Next, I painted the fronts of the drawers the same color that I painted the body, this dried sage. And I was careful to do a little bit on the top rim and to cover those sides. And now here I've turned the piece over before I did any finish on the top, so that I could work from the bottom. I really like for my pieces to not look sloppy underneath, and because you never know if someone's going to be cleaning the floor or just looking for a stray toy and look up and see nasty sloppy job of paint. So I like to get that bottom as well. And here I'm doing the edges. Also, while I'm at it and I'm at a good angle, I go ahead and put my second coat using a spray bottle of water to make sure it's a pretty thin coat. And being mindful of drips again, because the water makes the drips occur more frequently. And while I'm at it, I also use my ink stamp with paint on it to add my logo to the bottom. I'm a real fan of natural wood, and normally I use a varnish to bring out that natural wood grain. But for this piece, I really wanted a whitewashed or bleached look. So I'm using Dixie Belle's Voodoo in White Magic stain. This is a gel stain that's water-based, and so it's easy to clean up and it's easy to apply. I did notice that I had to be careful to ensure that I didn't go over certain areas more than I needed to, because it could really make the stain go deeper into the wood. So I just kept going section by section and adding a little bit of water because again, it's water-based. So I could kind of wipe out some of the concentrated areas, and I think it ended up pretty good. Here's the process. Here's where you can really see that I had overlapped the colors. I didn't hesitate any length of time at all, but it just really seemed to pick up the stain quickly. So I just kept working with it and using the stain and then alternating with water and wiping it out, and then even going the other direction across the wood grain really seemed to help. But you'll see that in just a second. Kind of naturally, I resorted back to using sections, and again, I overlapped the stain and you can see the stripes again. So here, I'm just putting it all on at once, and that seemed to help a lot for this piece. I think really the wood was, because I had just sanded it, very thirsty, so it really drank in that stain. And last step, going with the grain. I wanted a pretty stencil for these drawers, so I'm using the geranium stencil by Dixie Belle, which is a plastic stencil that's held up really well with lots of uses. And what I'm doing is I'm just using a foam applicator and pouncing Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint in fluff, trying to make sure that I continue the stencil to the next drawer. So this was a little bit awkward at first, but I got the hang of it pretty soon there. You'll see what I'm doing with the rest of the stencil to finish out that white geranium. And as a reminder, here's where we started. And here's where we ended up, with this beautiful lightened end table with a bleached top, some gorgeous white geraniums by Dixie Belle, some new chalky knobs, and a dried sage body and frame. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I hope you are too. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time.